And we're back with my guest talking about Masjid Muhammad, 50 years of a Muslim community in the nation's capital. Amir, that history has brought us a long way.
Yes, it has.
Where are we at today?
Where are we at today? We're a growing community. We're a community that's involved in all facets of American society and all facets of the D.C. community. I believe Brother Imam Benjamin and Talib will talk a little bit more about it. But Masjid Muhammad has been a community that helped many other masjids in our area get started in the early 80s and 90s. Today, there's many members come in to feel, get a sense of history, a sense of pride, a sense of belonging and connecting with Masjid
Let me
Muhammad.
ask you, how many mosques are there? I mean, you said that this was the first one built from the ground up.
Yes.
There was another mosque in Washington, the Islamic Center, which...
The Islamic Center was built in 57.
57.
As a more of a...
As a museum.
As a museum and for diplomats. And then you had a community on Leroy Place. The Ahmadians had a masjid that they would meet. But Masjid Muhammad was the first community of Muslims that was open up to the broader community.
But let me ask you, there was a transition and Imam Warithin Muhammad brought this discussion you talked about earlier of an orthodox Islam. So do you find in Masjid Muhammad today, is it still a quote, black?
No.
What is it now?
One thing people, let me say this real quick if I can. I think one thing people misunderstand about us when we were all African American is that we were not racial. It was about human rights. African Americans getting their human rights. That's what that movement was about. Today we have moved and grown beyond that, that now you will come to Masjid Muhammad today and find people of all nationalities.
Yes,
you'll find the Sudanese Muslim, the Caucasian American Muslim, the Turkish, definitely Turkish Muslims. Strong support there. So we are now we have a diversity in Masjid Muhammad that is a true testimony to Al-Islam and what Al-Islam does for individual. And that Islam, that Al-Islam, what it does is give us our life back.
Sister Brahija, that engagement now broader than just African Americans, but a wider. But what about the engagement beyond the quote, Muslim community?
In the early 80s, Imam Warithin Muhammad was asked to give a talk at Washington Hebrew Congregation, which is a Jewish synagogue here in Washington, D.C. And since that time, we've had a continuous, ongoing relationship with them. Whenever they have their holidays, their seders, and other events, they always extend an invitation to us to attend. And they've been to our masjid. Rabbi Lusting is a rabbi now. And also approximately 12 years ago, I think, when Imam Muhammad went to Rome, he met Kiara Lubick, who was, at that time, the leader. She passed away approximately 2 years ago. But the folklore community, which is a very large, worldwide lay Catholic organization, and we have a very close relationship with them, with the group that's here in D.C. and all over the country.
So we're talking about Muslims engaged in the 80s. This is 30 years in relations with the Jewish community, with the Catholic community.
That's right.
I'm going to ask Imam Ben, you have been an imam, deputy imam. Where's this community going? You've got new leadership. Where's it going?
Well, leading into that, I'm going to let Atiba make some comments. He has some comments he wants to make that he needs to make on that.
All right.
But we are going into the future. It's not just the last 50 years. This is good that we're having this discussion about the last 50 years, but we're looking at the next 50 years plus where we're going. And I believe where we're going, much of America will be pleased with the Muslim community where we're headed now. And if you want to add something.
Well, I think, and where we're looking at as we move forward is because of the teachings, the way that Imam Muhammad presented and taught us, we're looking now that in the future we're going to have many other Imam Muhammads, many more Imam Muhammads teaching. I mean, if you really look at it, you could say, in a sense, that we were in school. And so now you're going to have many others who are going to come out and be able to talk about the religion. And a lot of times, people look at some of the things that are going on today as being negative. These are opportunities for us to engage and to educate the public more.
What negatives you talking about?
Well, regardless of, we haven't done as good of a job as we should in terms of being out front and talking and engaging the public and educating the public on why there are certain things in terms of our way of life that we look at things, but also how those things and the way that we look at things and the way that Muhammad the Prophet and Imam Muhammad taught us is how to be better Americans, how to be better people, how to be upright. And that's for all cultures. As the Quran says, Allah says, we've been made in nations and tribes for us to get to know one another. And these are those opportunities for us to get to know one another.
Excellent, excellent. Now, Brother Ben, now what you were going to say, you could say it now because you done threw the brother.
Well,
where is it going in the future?
Along with
From
going
old school like you.
Well, I think the Quranic ayat that he just quoted from Surah 49 is a good point to begin that statement. Allah saying, as Brother Atiba just mentioned, that he did not make us different he made us nations and tribes to get to know one another.
For a reason.
Yes, for a reason, and not to despise one another. And on that premise, and on that ayat, I like to believe that's where we are headed, as all of humanity. And I think it's very important that we understand that Master Muhammad, in the nation's capital, we were known as number 4 in the first experience. And many of us still see ourselves as number 4 somewhat, because Mecca is number 1, Medina is number 2, and then Masjid Al-Aqsa is number 3, and Master Muhammad being strategically located. I know he may feel a little different, but number 4, we are in the nation's capital.
Out, people who preach always have some kind of angle on
yes, we got to with these historians.
Yes, sir, but go ahead.
But we still have, and I'm saying that as a joke, but on a serious note, we are located in a strategic time in history.
Yes, sir.
When much of this Islamophobia and many of these other, as you mentioned, you asked about some of the negatives, and as Atiba very eloquently stated, we haven't done a good enough job ourselves. You know, we got comfortable being Muslims now, that, I'm talking about African-American Muslims particularly. We got comfortable being Muslims that it's not a threat for us as it once was. Okay. Because we went through some of the same threats that are now happening for our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so where I like to believe we're going now is to get back out front and to bring about that peace that Islam teaches. Okay. And to bring about that balance, being that balanced Muslim community that the Quran says, if I'm not mistaken, in Surah 11, I think it is, where Allah says, speaks of us as being why not be a community of balanced good sense. And I think that's where we're headed.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm going to move us in a direction. I know this is a deep subject. I know that the history is long, going back to people like Omar Said and others. I would like to close this with the word from the young man who grew up wearing a bow tie and probably had people call you bad names and all that stuff when you were growing up, being different. Now, in an age where we're seeing the Park 51 and those other issues, this community was there long before. Atiba, why don't you close us out?
You know, for a long time, America was considered to be a melting pot. Today, someone said the other day to me that it's being looked more like a salad bowl, where you mix a lot of different colors and different things in it, and you respect and you appreciate the differences of those things as they come together. And so when we look at this whole thing, Sister Bahija mentioned and talked about the Imam and his visit to the Vatican. Those things were very important for us to recognize and to appreciate and to respect that an American Muslim was the first African-American to speak at the Vatican before 100,000 Catholics. That's very, very important to recognize. The president recently gave a speech at Cairo University, and on my trip to Egypt a few weeks ago, the Muslims there and the Christians that I spoke with spoke very highly of the president and what they believed was a very historic speech. And unfortunately, we haven't recognized that here in America yet. We haven't recognized yet that where we're going here, this conversation, this dialogue, this debate in terms of Islam in America, is a very important dialogue to have, because if we don't, or if we aren't careful, if Americans, that's Muslims, Christians, and Jews, do not respect our differences, but look at more so strongly what our similarities are, then we will be caught up in the same way that Europe was in its downfall.
And guess what? What we're not going to get caught up in is any more time. I want to thank you all for joining us. That's all we have time for today. I want to thank you all for watching. We'll be right back after a short break with my final thoughts.